One of the more amazing facts is that all of the great civilizations that have arisen have also collapsed. In fact, a close study of 50 historical states and empires showed that every one of them had its moment of rise, moment of climax, bloom, and then its time of falling away, implosion. A little interesting and little known fact is that the time it takes to rise is approximately the same as the time it takes to collapse. Sometimes it took a long time to rise. It took a long time to collapse. Sometimes they went very up quickly and they collapsed quickly. And so, you think about this in human history, and every one of them rose up and collapsed. And here we are in the middle of, an amazing moment. And the question is, when you look back over history, what caused it? What led to the collapse, or even what led to the rise? And really, that's the focus of this particular power. We're studying the power of synergy. And then one way to understand the rise and fall of empires, the rise and fall of nation states, and the rise and fall of complexity in general, not just the human world, but biological complexity. One way to understand this is with the concept of synergy. Synergy means simply working together, or creating together, or doing together, or being together, or living together. It is what happens in relationship in the universe. And there can be all kinds of synergy, but positive synergy is when a relationship leads to a functional effect that's beneficial and would not be there otherwise, other than the relationship itself. So it's another way, and a simple way to say what positive synergy is, which for the most part I just mean by synergy. A simple way of saying it is, it's a mutually enhancing relationship. Synergy. Now this would be, we could illustrate this with some examples just to give you give ourselves a sense of it. One would be, one of my favorites is the emperor penguins. They live on the South Pole, and they've worked out a way to survive some pretty intense winters, and they mill around. So I have like this, I'm thinking the bottom of the earth. They feel like they're on the top of the earth down there. Okay, so that you have all these penguins milling about, and so they're only occasionally on the outside edge of the large group. And when they're on the outside edge, then the winds blast them and they lose some of the body heat. Then they quickly are pulled back inside. And so they mill around and they warm each other up, and then you're back on the outside. Now, none of them could survive down there if they were on their own, or even a smaller group couldn't survive. It takes this size of a group to survive that winter, those intense conditions. One of the more, I think, really amazing insights in biology goes by the name of the Baldwin effect. And this is the idea that the major changes in the evolution of life begin with a change in behavior. This is endorsed by a number of scientists, including Ernst Mayr, the dean of evolutionary sciences, who worked at Harvard for years and years. But it's somewhat different than thinking about the changes coming from genetic mutation. Genetic mutation would be one way in which life changes. But the question is Is that the major way? In this point of view, it is the change in behavior first. So you can see how this would work out. You can see how this would work out with the penguins. They come up with this idea of interacting, and then, because it works, because the synergy enables them to survive, then you have the change at the genetic level that would enhance that previous decision at the behavioral level. And so the physiology and the social cohesion begins to be held by the genetic information. So for instance, if you have, so built into this process would be a way in which to discourage those penguins that only hang out in the middle of the group. So the idea is a kind of sharing that takes place. It's not worked out like an engineer, but this is the way in which it would go. You'd have a deep, cooperative interaction that would enable their survival. This would be, I think, one of my favorite examples of synergy. Another would be what happens with deer and antelope. They have bacteria inside their stomachs that break down the plants. So why are they cooperating? They're not cooperating because they're close kin. You see, they are cooperating because this arrangement enables them to survive. And this example of synergy is what I'm trying to extend into the entire cosmic sense. Another example of synergy is with the plants. Plants need nitrogen, and there's not a nitrogen in the atmosphere. But they can't by themselves draw in the nitrogen, most of them. So they form this synergistic relationship with bacteria or fungus that form these little nodules on their root system. The nodules can fix the nitrogen out of the atmosphere into the plant. So you've got a great thing going here. The bacteria provide the nitrogen, and the tree provides a little bit of sugar to enable them to exist. And then if you have some plants and without the root nodules, near some plants with the root nodules, the ones with the root nodules will outcompete the others. So you have the replacement of this other form. The synergistic relationship replaces the one that is without that extra benefit. Same thing is true with pollination in plants. So that the plants themselves develop this interesting relationship with the insects. And instead of just allowing the pollen to be distributed, the insects come and increase the movement from one plant to another. So many plants today can't exist unless there are pollinators around. Another amazing example of synergy is this squid that lives over in Hawaii. And this is sort of the extent to which life will go to find synergistic relationships. This squid hunts at night. And if it's seen, of course, its prey will fly away. But it's developed this relationship with some bioluminescent bacteria that hang around with the squid on an organ attached to its body. And the bioluminescent bacteria send out a diffused light so that even if there's a strong moon above it, all right, the squid isn't seen by the prey. So what does the squid have to provide? A certain amount of energy to the bacteria, but the bacteria enable the squid to actually, swoop in on the prey without being seen. My point here is, see, synergy is another way to compete. There's a kind of cooperative relationship between the bacteria and the squid, but still there's the same competition and this predation taking place. So, so you get a feel for synergy with these animals. And now I want to sort of draw back and ask this question. What would synergy mean in the larger context of the universe? And again, it would be a relationship that enables survival, or it's relationship that enables endurance. See, this question of endurance, of just surviving, it's kind of the main question. I started off talking about human groups and civilizations. That's because we relate to this. But overall, if you look around the universe consists of those things that have managed to endure. So the ultimate question in the universe is, how can one proceed in a way that enables you to survive or endure? You would think it would be easy for the elementary particles. I mean, say you're a neutron, right? I mean, how tough can it be? You're just a neutron, right? You don't have to eat or anything. No, as a matter of fact, the neutron will decay after a very short amount of time, so that the neutron's existence is going to evaporate unless it finds a way through synergy to survive. The way it survives is by a relationship with the proton. The proton with the neutron enables the neutron to survive. Now, I'm just saying, this is the mystery, this is the magic of the universe. I could invent a different universe. In my universe, neutrons exist forever, no problem. They're like little hard grains of sand or something, they're just there. But in our universe, the relationship is required. And then that was one relationship, one proton with one neutron. Different combinations of protons and neutrons endure, and different combinations don't. So, for instance, if you have the combination that leads to plutonium, that doesn't endure. It dissolves. But if you have a combination of protons and neutrons of carbon, that does endure. Out of the literally infinite number of possibilities combining protons and neutrons, there are fewer than 90 that are actually stable and endure. Each of these is a synergistic relationship at the level of elementary particles that enables long-term endurance. Now, if we move further in the story and look at the number of minerals there are on the planet Earth. So now we've got not only the protons and electrons, but we've actually created all these different elements, like carbon and phosphorus and oxygen. And now we look at the different combinations. Once again, there are an infinite number of them. But here on the planet Earth, there are only several thousand minerals that are stable and endure. And out of those several thousand, we have the emergence of life itself. Now, the magic of life is the magic of synergy. These are minerals. These are molecules. And yet when they're brought together, right, they can bring forth life, another quality. Maybe a step back from that would be to think about the emergence of water itself. Water, you start off with elementary particles, and then you give birth to water, this fluid magic. So once again, we're back to the original presentation on seamlessness. That we live embedded in this realm of seamlessness, where elementary particles can bring forth this quality, this power, this presence we call water. It's right here. Water is right here if the conditions are right for bringing that forth. So by synergy, then, I also mean that the qualities that come about through these relationships. We have water, and then we have life. Life endures. Life endures. But it has a challenge. In order for life to endure, two things have to happen. Energy has to be obtained, and offspring have to be produced. That challenge has been answered by every form of life that has existed here for 4 billion years. It remains the central challenge of what it means to be human. It's the central challenge of any form of life. It's a double challenge. Find a way to obtain energy. Secondly, find a way to reproduce. You know, the challenge was different for a neutron. All it had to do was find a proton and hang out. It didn't have to reproduce. But here we have a different situation. Those forms that are here today of life, all the forms we find about us, all of them, come from an ancient lineage that succeeded generation after generation after generation on those two counts. All the way back 4 billion years. A string of amazing success. We come from a line of winners. They have found a way to survive. And it's always been the same way. Find the energy, reproduce. And the question then is, how does this relate to our moment? You know, when situations become very, very complicated, we can get distracted and drawn away from the central question. Now I'm trying to draw it right down to the most essential question we have to ask. How are we going to proceed if this is our fundamental question? How? How are we going to proceed in terms of this question of energy and of offspring? I just want to look at, in the history of life then, some of the major breakthrough moments having to do with synergy. And the first would be the earliest form of life, 4 billion years ago. Prokaryotic cells, right? Bacteria. These are single cells. And they came up with an amazing relationship. They traded their deepest secrets. They traded aspects of their genetic information, one to another. Now, it's quite possible that there were earlier forms of life that emerged, you see, and that organized themselves, found energy, and even replicated themselves, but that didn't actually share the information, their genetic information. But all of those other forms of life, if they did exist, we have no evidence of them, if they did exist, they were supplanted by this form of life. Now, so you have I'm a bacterium, say, all right? And then another bacterium comes up to me, and I, for whatever reason, I take a chunk of my life and just sort of hand it over, right? And this chunk could be a way of processing a molecule necessary for the metabolism of this cell. But I'm giving the information over. So this enabled ideas to spread around the planet. Because if you have a major breakthrough in one place at the informational level, and if this is now shared, then over time this spreads all around the planet. And so this form of prokaryotic life supplanted any other possible forms that were here. So this idea, this synergistic relationship, emerged and became planetary. The second huge moment in life we've referred to before because you really can't think about it too much, and that is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is an amazing moment of synergy between life and the sun. Here it is, a cell, a history of cells, but cells learn to interact with sunlight as a way of solving one of the challenges, energy. So they draw in this energy. Now, this synergistic relationship explodes and goes around the planet as well. It changes the whole story of life. It's such a deep breakthrough, a deepening relationship between the earth and the sun. It became so prevalent that at the present time, if you look at all of the life on this planet, and if you weigh it, right, 99% of that will be photosynthetic organisms. It's almost the way of life on this planet. Another huge breakthrough moment. See, now again, I'm talking about what endures. That is an example of what endures. That's synergy that built a way of life that's everywhere now. I guess I wanted to also to get you to think for a second on this question of morality, because we have to deal with the fact that the photosynthetic form of life eliminated a lot of other forms of life. They were just pushed aside. Either they're outcompeted, all right, or they're absorbed into this way of life. It's strange, I guess, to think about morality. I'm not sure this is such a good idea. But, you wonder if those cells back then, if you gave them a little moment of conscious self-awareness, how they would feel about the fact that they've eliminated all the other forms of life, right, that were there. I mean, there may be a little bit of pride, like, rather impressive, and yet, but also, what about all these fabulous forms of life? My reason for bringing this up is just to dwell on the fact that the logic of life is deeper than our ideas about it. The logic and the functioning of life is deeper than our ideas are on what would be moral or right. I'm trying to talk about the dynamics of life. Because it's easy to bring this question up now when we're talking about bacterial life forms, but then later on it becomes more difficult as it gets closer to our present moment. Main point is this. Life throws out this challenge. And the challenge is energy and offspring. However it is met is okay with life. That's the point. Because life rewards this creativity with survival. Everything around us has survived at this challenge. And so that's our question too. How can we meet this challenge? Another way to say it is this, that life is a great drama. It is dramatic. And that the challenge is thrown down to all the organisms, creates the drama. It's almost as if life insists upon the drama. And the drama is where synergy flowers. It's almost as if life has created a context where synergy can work and show itself. And so I want to emphasize here, where it's easier to think about, that the ultimate quest isn't to eliminate the challenge. That would be to eliminate life. The ultimate quest is actually to respond to the challenge appropriately in this particular historic moment. Challenge of life, a challenge of energy and food, and what we send into the future, offspring, creativity. So then, another amazing moment then in this quest was the moment when the atmosphere became filled up with oxygen. Referred to this before as well, because it's a decisive moment for all the rest of life. The atmosphere becomes filled with oxygen because life has learned how to get hydrogen from water. Great invention. It works. There's another synergistic interaction between life and water. Enables life to get what it needs, the hydrogen. Releases oxygen in the atmosphere. So over time, the atmosphere becomes more and more oxygenated. But the oxygen destroys life, tears it apart. So you have this amazing challenge, right? You've filled the world with elements that are toxic to you. And so how do you proceed there? Incredible moment. Life learned to actually draw in the oxygen. The oxygen is way more chemically active than other molecules. So the life forms that figured out how to draw in the oxygen became many times more energetic than the other forms of life. Can I just, again, incredible moment. This was people estimate, scientists estimate this was something like 2 billion years after the birth of life. Okay, so just take this in. 2 billion years of life. Amazing things are happening. Then this strange thing takes place, oxygen. But life responds. How? Through synergy, creating a new structure that draws in oxygen. This new form of life becomes very energetic, and it replaces the other forms of life. Not entirely. Not entirely. But it spreads all around the planet. So then life becomes eukaryotic. There are only two forms of life, really. There's prokaryotic and there's eukaryotic. We're eukaryotic. We are composed of eukaryotic cells. All the other forms of life had to go down inside places that hid from the oxygen, inside of other organisms, or the place I like to think of them is at the bottom of swamps. Right? You'll see why later. But what it had been, this form of life had been the principal form of life for 2 billion years. And it's replaced because another form of life responded to the challenges in a way that was more powerful. It's sort of overwhelming. To me, it's the sense of, again, it's a sense of drama that we find ourselves right in the middle of that. There's no guarantee about what's going to happen next. Nobody has any assurance. It's simply the kind of drama where anyone, no matter how centrally located in the drama, anyone can evaporate. And so that's why this question is so essential. What is it that enables life to go forward? And the idea here is that we focus on this question of synergy. One last example I would like to just explore of synergy emerging in the life story in a big way is that of sexuality. And the kind of incredible idea that something like 1.5 billion years ago, organisms learned how to mate. That's the universe had been in existence at that point 11.5 billion years. So the universe put off inventing sexual mating for 11.5 billion years. Why? I don't know. But I'm trying to emphasize the point that it's a very recent occurrence. It's just like yesterday, in a certain sense, 1.5 billion years ago. And what did this enable? An explosion of possibilities, different forms. Different life forms could come out of the sexual mating. And a more effective merging of an organism with the particular world in which it found itself. Because of the range of new forms coming out of sexual mating. So this idea comes about and once again sweeps around the planet. So sexualized animals become the whole world of animals. And then we come to our moment. So I want you to think about it in terms of these moments of synergy emerging. And now we look at the human. Consider the human. The human, our existence, Homo sapiens, something like maybe 150,000 years. And so we're part of this whole enterprise, this whole drama. with all of the risks and the challenges. And I think the only way to really appreciate the challenge is to reflect on the Neanderthal humans. Hey, I mean, completely human. In fact, their brain capacity is slightly larger than Homo sapiens. So they impressive group of people. And they did really well for 200,000 years. I mean, I'm impressed. And yet, 30,000 years ago, they went extinct. They were replaced. We replaced them, most likely. Some people think maybe it's through warfare, but the more common hypothesis is that we simply replaced them. Why? Because we responded to the challenges of energy and offspring a little bit better. So it's this question of what is it that it will enable us to be successful and not be replaced? What is it will enable us to actually move forward? If you look back over history of humanity, it is it's kind of interesting how the complexification of the human is a synergistic response to, for instance, the question of food. One well-known example is the Shoshone Indians and how they would organize themselves around this question of food. It had to do with rabbits. They lived off rabbits, and they during a lot of the year they were actually apart in small groups. But then when it came time to really bring in the rabbits, they would gather together and form these larger social groups all around capturing rabbits. By themselves, one by one, capturing a rabbit is a challenge. But in groups of 50 or so, they could very rapidly bring home lots of rabbits. Why? Because of the synergy of their relationships. Because of the social cohesion that took place in response to the task of going after the rabbits. It's like getting something for almost nothing. All of this energy comes forth for the human group that otherwise wouldn't be there. It's the community. It's the complexification of the relationships that enables the acquisition of the free energy. And this response then carries all the way through the human story. And then the actual society that's created is going to depend upon the particular challenge of the food. So the Shoshone Indians would have a certain kind of society, and the Inuit up in Alaska, they'd have a different society around capturing a whale. No Inuit's going to capture a whale by him or herself. And yet with a certain group, they're able to master that type of challenge. Now, then you have another amazing moment, the most impressive moment in the history of humanity, and that's the moment when humans began to interact with the plant world and create horticulture and settlement. I mean, working with seeds and plants, it required a lot of complexification of human consciousness to deal with that. But once that became established, it turned out to be a response to the challenge of food that went beyond what was possible in the hunting and gathering phase. Simply that, the amount of food that came forth was far greater than the hunting and gathering groups could manage. There's more food. It leads to more offspring. And so you have this replacement taking place of the hunter-gatherers. They're crowded out. They're pushed to the margins as the settlements grow. Once again, it's this question. It's a form of life that's appearing, settled humans. It appears, it answers the challenges more effectively than earlier forms. And so it becomes our future. It becomes their future. It becomes our present. So and then we have an intensification of that with the development of the classical civilizations and the industrial humans. All of our mental functioning and all of our language skills have their origin in these original challenges. And so the productivity of an industrial society goes way beyond that of a traditional agricultural or horticultural society. And so we have the same pattern repeating itself. But now as I start to say this, and we start to think about, contemporary human society, contemporary industrial human society, crowding out earlier forms of humanity. You see, now the moral question comes in, and we all get a little bit uneasy, because is this something we desire or want? Well, certainly not. And the fact of these amazing indigenous groups evaporating our time all around the planet is profoundly troubling. But the main point I want to get across here is that it was in response to the fundamental challenge. And it was in the bringing forth of new forms of synergy that led to this situation. So here we are now. The thing to realize is that the challenge of getting food also includes the challenge of not becoming food. So I held off talking about this part until we got to our moment now, but it's all the way from the beginning. It is this challenge of obtaining food. Well, here is a way to obtain food. Let someone else grow the food and then take it. Now, what is amazing is that life rewarded the robbers as much as the robbed. Meaning this, that a viable way of proceeding as a human group is to become a parasite on a producing group. So we have, we call them the barbarians, right? The hordes sweeping across Eurasia. But it's a way of responding to the fundamental challenges. Regardless of what we feel about it, it turns out that life rewards it. And here's why. Because even in that particular activity, synergy is brought forth. If the mind is focused through warfare, the cohesion of the group deepens. The relationship among the minds of the group also deepens. The rate of creativity expands. So we have the situation where this quest for food and this quest for avoiding becoming food both grow up together, certainly over, way back as far as we can tell. This was, if you go back far enough, humans were prey for the larger predators. But after a certain point, that drops off and it's just prey for other humans. So here we are in this moment. We wake up and we are not just able to speak about the process that led to us, we can begin to understand the dynamics of this process. And we're right in the middle of it. And what we discover is that, as I've said before, the whole planet is withering. So what then the question is this. Life hasn't ended its journey. It has a new demand on us. What is the demand that life is making? As always, it's the demand of synergy. What form of synergy? And the idea of these lectures is that the challenge of our time is for synergy to operate, at least in part, through conscious self-awareness. It's for the human then to enter into its planetary role. The challenge then is for the human to give birth to a new form that will actually become planetary. I would say this. We're at one of those moments when we're going from one form of humanity to another. We talked about anthropologists talk about the early forms of humanity being in the form of bands, and later they grew into tribes, all right, then chiefdoms, all right, horticultural society, classical society, agricultural society, industrial society. So we have this sequence. And in each case, you have a growth in size and in complexity. So here we are in the middle of this long sequence, right in the middle of it. And so we're shuddering between moving from this particular moment into another form. And that form, we can go and make up a name for it. But a simple way to talk about it is it's a planetary form of the human. And so we're moving from an industrial civilization to a planetary civilization. So what would be our way forward? Here are some ideas on how we move forward into a planetary civilization. How then are we to respond to these challenges of energy and offspring? That's another way to say the same question. I just have three ideas. The first is that we re-symbolize our understanding of what it means to be human in terms of our deeper biological nature. We re-symbolize our society so we understand that we are biologically cousins to everything. So our basic identity comes not from our particular society, not from our religion, not from our politics, not from our civilization. Our basic identity comes from our biological structure. This is news, right? DNA was just discovered, really, like yesterday. You know, the idea of a gene, Charles Darwin didn't know that genes existed, right? And now we know that we all share the same genes. You know, all humans have almost identical genetic structure. We got the same genes that's inside of an oak tree. Not all of them, but some of them. Inside of an oyster. That would really upset René Descartes because of his difficulty with oysters. But we are genetically kin and cousin to all the different forms of life. So to re-symbolize what it means to be human, and so that we can discover really our core identity as Earth community. This is going to require a new society. And there's a simple way to describe what the society is like. In this society that I'm imagining, right, it's easy to be planetary. That's the simple way of saying it. Reinvent the institution so it becomes easy to be planetary. At the present time, it's hard to be planetary if you live in an advanced industrial society or a traditional society. It's hard because the symbols and the understandings shape our consciousness to think of ourselves in different ways. I'll give you two examples. One is some of the schooling that takes place in Pakistan, where the young children are raised on a form of xenophobia, especially directed at Western civilization. It's one of the fundamental impressions that's put upon the young mind, is this enmity between their world and the Western world. Here's another form. In the United States of America, Our education is designed to train young humans to become part of the ongoing corporate use of the planet, which is ultimately destructive. So that in both cases, there is an other being taught. And we're learning something about what it means to be human with respect to an other. The earth is here for our use. Other people are here so that we can battle with them. In this emerging society, it is based upon the notion that we really are fundamentally earth community, to re-symbolize what it means. Secondly, the second point would be to bring in the other voices in the fundamental challenge we have before us. To bring in all of the other voices. We have a challenge. Challenge of energy and food. Challenge of offspring. Who are the other voices that are excluded? Well, where do we begin? All of the different societies that are outside of the Western scientific approach to things. I mean, here in the industrial society, all of those societies have amazing things to contribute. They need to be brought into this discussion. But as well, the other non-human societies, they need to be brought in as well. They know amazing things about how we can deal with this question of food and offspring. For instance, I think the fish have a lot to teach us about how to build a vibrant ocean. They know amazing things about the ocean that we don't know at all. I mean, not the slightest bit. So that we become students to the fish in terms of this question of food and all of the other components of the Earth's society. And the third step I would like to float by you is this. Warfare has to be replaced. How? And how can we think about warfare being replaced? It's first of all, it's necessary to realize just how deep this fact goes in us. Warfare has been around forever, and it shows up in us in this xenophobia. We have like a natural response to outsiders, and there was a very important reason for doing this, and I've already mentioned it. Because we didn't know for sure if we were going to be prey, right? So that there was a need for attention to other human groups. That kind of tension is not going to evaporate, especially because that kind of tension led to the development of synergy, social cohesion. We need a way that actually will lead to that kind of social cohesion that isn't warfare. And my suggestion is this. It is by taking on the struggle of dealing with a withering planet. It is by taking on the struggle of dealing with ecosystems that are in collapse. That is a challenge that is far greater than the enmity between any particular human groups. And it's one that will draw forth a tremendous response from human consciousness, especially if the response takes place in synergistic relationship with others struggling with the same challenge. I wanted to talk about some of the qualities. So we've talked about each of the different powers and as they surface in a human. What are the qualities that a person has? If a person is fundamentally drawn into the power of allurement, what sort of qualities of mind and consciousness would you have? A person drawn into the challenge and the power of centration. Okay, what about synergy? The first quality of a synergy person is amazing optimism. Incredible, eternal optimism. A sense of just, it's just, we are so close We are so close. We're so close to this amazing breakthrough. Why? Because we were constructed by synergy. This is a power that we are. And it's a power that pervades the entire universe. So it's really nearby. It's close. Now, there are lots of reasons for understanding why it makes sense to be optimistic. For instance, just imagine this. In the human community, 1/2 of its creative power has not been drawn upon. That's amazing. 1/2. Women have not been drawn upon in terms of this fundamental challenge. That is a lot of genetic wisdom. That is an incredible storehouse of possibility. All of that's right there waiting to come forth. Another reason to be optimistic is that all of the insights, I was trying to suggest before, all of the insights that are carried by the non-human species, those haven't been drawn upon. We had a different idea. We had the idea that we could come up with a way of being planet, a way of farming, a way of agriculture. And we imposed this on the planet. And it's always simplistic. What's amazing, what's incredible now, is that for a while, even really brilliant people thought what we should do is kill the predators. We should kill the wolves. Or just the idea of it. I mean, even like ecological scientists had that idea. I mean, even in the 20th century. It just boggles the mind. In other words, just to think that we could somehow re-engineer things and improve upon the synergies that were developed over 4 billion years is a form of madness. It really is. So to escape that pathology and to realize that in the interaction themselves is the synergy that enables the whole thing to happen, that means we have an enormous wealth to draw upon that we have not really drawn upon. Even something as simple as this, photosynthesis. The photosynthetic process of the plants is way beyond anything we've come up with in terms of our technology. So, eternal optimism is the way of synergy. Another a quality of the synergy person is a visionary. These are the visionaries, the mystics, and why? Again, because they are not just reasoning about the wealth of possibilities, they can feel them. That's the difference. They can feel them, and that's where their sense of abundance comes from. Well, I can give you a negative form too, because all these powers have their positive and negative form. A negative form is when eccentrics, like really strange eccentrics, and they have really weird ideas coming from cosmic explanations for why things are the way they are, and you just want to run away when they start talking. And they have a special appreciation for their vast importance in the scheme of things. I mean, in other words, cult figures are big on synergy too, because they feel all this, and they're expert on drawing out the synergies of a group. And so the followers, they get a sense of the possibilities here, and the cult leaders get to know how to draw that out. And yet it's just so bizarre and unhinged, because it comes from certainty of an inner knowing without any connection to outer reality. So there's that danger of becoming a walled-off city, right? Okay. So another way of thinking about the synergy person I mentioned before is dreaming, and I think that is a good way to highlight it. It's Martin Luther King Jr. His "I Have a Dream." I mean, he just felt how close it was. Just around the corner, we could have a society where all the different components were working together. That is the explosion of synergy. So that the synergistic person is one A person who believes in abundance can feel abundance. Magnanimity. It's kind of an explosion of possibilities. I want to just end then with just a last image to think about the birth of this new form of human, the birth of synergy in conscious self-awareness, the birth of a new era of humanity. One way to think about this is that we live in the death throes of Western civilization. It's all at an end. And the ending moment is just like all of the other moments when empires collapsed, all the other moments when states collapsed, or many of them. A more powerful society is emerging. A society with deeper synergy. And a society with much better technology. And that society is the Earth community. It's a society that is far surpasses anything Western civilization has arrived at, because Western civilization is just a little tiny subset of this larger society. So not only is it superior in terms of technology, it's also superior in terms of its moral authority, because it provides the guidance for our movement forward in participating in the birth of a synergy that will lead to an abundance of life for all of the children, not just human children, not just white human children, not just industrial white human children, but all of the children, all of the species. It is this transition into a time when conscious self-awareness becomes planetary. And it doesn't mean that the other forms of consciousness are going to somehow dissipate and disappear. They're not. We go forward just like in past moments, with all of the different forms still hanging around. So when we had the oxygen revolution, like I mentioned before, the prokaryotes had to go down to the bottom of the swamps in the mud. So my hope is that as this planetary form of consciousness emerges and brings forth this new synergistic abundance, then the lesser forms, the nationalistic forms of consciousness, will have to hide down the bottom of swamps somewhere. Thanks. Oh, one last thing. This movement into a deeper synergy involving all the components of the Earth community, this movement is going to take place. We don't know the time schedule, but it is what synergy has done throughout the whole history. We align our own personal energies with this ancient movement by participating in the birth of a society where the fundamental organizing principle is mutually enhancing relationships throughout all levels of the society. We're aligning our energies with this cosmological power we're calling synergy.